You know that feeling when you walk into your space after a long day, and before you even sit down, something feels slightly off? It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle. Maybe it's the dishes in the sink, the clothes on the chair, or that one corner you've been meaning to deal with for days. Nothing is urgent, yet everything feels unfinished. Most people assume this is just about being tidy or disciplined, but psychology suggests something much deeper is happening beneath the surface. For a long time, it's easy to believe that people who keep their house clean are simply more organized, more structured, or somehow more put together. Maybe you've even thought they just have more time or more energy. But when you look closer at what psychologists have been quietly observing, a different picture starts to form. It turns out this behavior isn't really about cleanliness itself. It's about how the mind responds to its environment in ways we don't always notice. Your brain doesn't just passively observe your surroundings, it actively processes them. Every object, every unfinished task, every small piece of clutter doesn't just exist in the background, it registers. Even when you're not consciously thinking about it, your mind is still tracking it. A plate left in the sink becomes a reminder. A pile of clothes becomes a pending decision. A cluttered surface becomes a subtle signal that something is incomplete, and all of these signals add up. Here's the part most people overlook. Your mind treats unfinished physical things the same way it treats unfinished thoughts. They stay open. Psychologists sometimes describe this like having too many tabs open in a browser. Each one might seem small and harmless on its own, but together they begin to slow everything down. Your attention gets divided, your mental space starts to feel crowded, and even if you don't realize it, you carry that weight with you. So when someone keeps their house clean, they're not just cleaning in the traditional sense, they're closing loops. They're reducing the number of open signals their brain has to process. Each small action, putting something back, wiping a surface, organizing a space, is a way of telling the mind, this is handled, this doesn't need attention anymore. And in doing that, they create a kind of quiet mental relief. This is where things become psychologically interesting, because it's often not a conscious strategy. Most people who maintain clean spaces aren't thinking in terms of cognitive load or mental bandwidth. They're not analyzing their behavior in that way. Instead, they're responding to a feeling, a subtle difference between clarity and chaos. Over time, they learn, without needing to put it into words, that certain environments feel better to exist in. Think about how your body reacts in different spaces. When you try to focus in a messy room, something feels slightly off. Your attention drifts more easily. You might feel restless without understanding why. But when you walk into a clean, organized space, there's often a small shift. Your shoulders relax. Your breathing feels easier. Your thoughts feel more stable. That reaction isn't random, it's your nervous system responding to what it perceives as either order or overload. And here's something we don't talk about enough. Cleaning is often emotional. Sometimes you're not just organizing your environment, you're regulating your internal state. You're creating a sense of movement when something inside feels stuck. You're bringing structure to your surroundings when your thoughts feel scattered. It's a quiet form of self-adjustment that doesn't require words. Here's where it gets even more layered. For many people, keeping a house clean isn't about control in a rigid sense. It's about reducing friction. Friction in your thinking, friction in your daily decisions, friction in how you move through your day. Every small mess asks something from you, even if it's just a tiny bit of attention. And when those small demands accumulate, they start to drain your energy in ways that are easy to underestimate. People who consistently maintain clean spaces often have a subtle sensitivity to their environment, not in an obvious or dramatic way, but in a quiet, internal way. They notice how clutter affects their mood, their focus, and their sense of calm. They may not explain it logically, but they feel it, and instead of ignoring that feeling, they respond to it through small, consistent actions that restore a sense of balance. If this is resonating with you, you might find it meaningful to explore more psychological patterns like this. Subscribing helps this kind of content reach people who may need to hear it quietly at the right moment, just like you are right now. Now, here's where things become even more interesting. The same behavior, keeping a house clean, can come from very different emotional places. One person cleans because it brings them peace. Another cleans because they feel overwhelmed and need a sense of control. Someone else cleans because it gives them a feeling of progress when other parts of life feel uncertain or stuck. On the surface, it looks identical, but underneath, the motivations can be completely different. This is important because keeping a house clean doesn't automatically mean someone has everything figured out. Sometimes it's a coping mechanism, a way of creating order externally when things feel unpredictable internally. It can be a response to stress, anxiety, or uncertainty, but it can also be something healthier than that. A form of self-respect, a quiet acknowledgement that your environment affects your well-being, and a decision to take care of that environment in a consistent way. On the other side of this, if you struggle to keep your space clean, it doesn't mean you're lazy or lacking discipline. That's often the assumption people jump to, but it misses something deeper. It usually means your mental energy is being pulled somewhere else, somewhere heavier, somewhere that requires more of your attention and emotional resources. When your mind is dealing with internal pressure, physical organization becomes less of a priority, not because it doesn't matter, but because something else feels more urgent. At its core, this isn't really about cleaning at all. It's about awareness. It's about understanding the relationship between your external environment and your internal state. People who keep their house clean are often, conscious or not, managing how they feel by managing the space around them. They are shaping their environment in a way that supports clarity, stability, and ease. Once you start seeing it this way, something shifts. Your environment stops feeling neutral. You begin to notice how it influences your thoughts, your focus, and your mood in subtle but consistent ways. A cluttered space might feel slightly tense. A clear space might help you think more freely. These effects are small, but they accumulate over time. And this is where a deeper kind of understanding begins to form. Cleaning stops being just a task on a list. It becomes a signal, a reflection of what's happening internally, a way your mind communicates with your environment without using words. Sometimes it's about creating peace. Sometimes it's about regaining control. Sometimes it's simply about making things feel a little easier to handle. So if you've ever found yourself cleaning not because you had to, but because something inside felt unsettled, there's nothing strange about that. It doesn't mean you're overly particular. It doesn't mean you're trying too hard. It often means your mind is responding intelligently to what it feels and trying to create a sense of clarity in the way it knows how. And if this perspective made you pause and think, you can subscribe to explore more quiet psychological insights like this, not in a loud or overwhelming way, but slowly and thoughtfully over time. Sometimes simply understanding a pattern is enough to change how you experience it. You don't have to force anything. You don't have to immediately act on it. Just seeing it clearly begins to shift your relationship with it. And once you see it, you don't just see a clean room anymore. You start to notice what it does to you, how it shapes your thoughts, how it affects your energy, how it quietly supports or drains you in ways you hadn't fully realized before. And that awareness on its own is where change often begins.